Hello and welcome to another edition of Mailbag. What is Mailbag? Well, Mailbag is a feature of the channel where you guys leave lots of comments on the channel and I attempt to answer those comments, or if I can't answer those comments, I throw it out to you guys who have more knowledge on some of this stuff than I do. So let's get into the first mailbag of this session. Remember, like, comment, subscribe to the channel. Go over to Instagram and follow me there. Go over to Facebook, follow me there. That's where the normal notices are. And consider becoming a Patreon. Next one. Comment question comes from Solo Shiman. I think I pronounced that right. Of course, as everybody knows who watches this channel, if you've got a name that's not Adam, Joe or Paul, I pronounce it completely incorrectly. And I do apologise every single time I say that. But this video is in response to Roland R-5, what was the cleaning process? A video I did in April 2022. And I've got some updates on the Roland R-5 probably before Christmas. And Solo Shiman writes, I own an R5. Suddenly sound is not coming out from any pad, even via MIDI. The R5 is on with screen and buttons working, but no sounds at all. Is there any way to fix it or try something? Thanks so much. Great videos as always. Well, as always, thank you for the feedback. I wrote in here, this is quite funny, I wrote struggling with a bit with viewing figures, but actually viewing figures have gone up recently. And I can't work this YouTube algorithm out. You know, I get told things and I do things and nothing works, and all of a sudden it all comes back to life. Still would like to get a few more views, as every YouTuber would say. But that's not you guys' problems, it's probably the problems with content. But then again, I like doing this content, so this is a channel that's written for me, by me, with interesting stuff for you, I think. In terms of the R5, do you get sound out of the headphone socket? This would tend to tell me whether it's an amplification problem or something to do with the left and right outputs. So if there's a general amplification problem, you won't get any sound out of the headphone sockets either, so that could be your op amps. If you get out of the headphone socket but nothing out of the left and right, then pound or penny, you've got a problem with something that's generating the signals on the left and right channels, which could be, again, I'm not looking at the circuitry of the R8, but it's post sound generation. It's in the amplification circuit somewhere, not the problem with the sound generation, if that makes sense. So you know, it kind of directs you into where you're looking at the issue. Are you looking at the issue because you've got a problem with no sound generation, or are you looking at a problem with no sound amplification? So things like the DNA converters, for argument's sake. Now, it could be as simple as dry joints, more sinister dead capacitors, dead IC chips. The first port of call I would do with all this sort of stuff, and dry joints, believe me, can really hit you and are such a simple thing to fix. But I'd open up and I get a magnifying glass, much the same as this thing that's sitting over here, and I will go over the board in fine detail, looking for obvious indicators of dry joints, these being cracked solder, stains on the board, discoloured components. That's not dry joints, by the way, there's kind of the indicators you're looking for. If none of these are present, then you might need an oscilloscope to do a bit more in-depth tracing around the board to find out where your signal disappears, which also means you need the service manual. So I'd go and get a copy of the service manual if you can find them online. I do have the service manuals, but I won't, and I say this across the board, I'm happy to give people stuff, but it's in response to a donation to keep the channel running. Okay, and I make no bones about this. You know, this channel costs an amount of money to keep it going. So, you know, when you guys say, "Oh, can you just give me this?" Quite happy to do it. $5 donation to the channel. go to the PayPal icon that's on the About page on YouTube. You find the PayPal icon, send your donation, add your email address for what you're after, and I will send it through to you. But I'm being quite strict on that sort of stuff nowadays because, you know, I do want to help you guys, but this channel has an overhead. Next comment or question comes from Dave Bone in response to, and I haven't written what it's in response to. Well, it's in response to something, obviously. Hey-ho. And Dave writes, I see you have a MUSE Receptor on your bench. I was thinking of buying one. Can you tell me if latency is noticeable when playing live on a MIDI controller? Also, should I avoid cheaping out and go for version 2? Oh, the MUSE Receptor. Oh, dear. And you're quite right. Actually, if you look at the intro to Mailbox, you will see, sitting right behind me, a MUSE Receptor. I actually have 2 of them. And both the receptors I own are version 1 Rev Cs running version 1.7 of the MUSE operating system. Now, my experience is I see actually little latency with sounds generated by the receptor. The concepts of the receptor were that I have talked to these concepts many times on the channel, was to offload synthesis from the computer and allow the computer to run other processes, e.g. sequencing and other things, mixing for argument's sake, and not have to worry about sound generation, which takes a huge amount of CPU time. The MUSE Receptor, because it's running a lightweight Linux operating system, frees up far more system resources to the actual ability to generate sound synthesis, multiple sounds and synthesis, if you like, than a computer could. Now, yes, computers have got faster. The MUSE Receptors were 2007. Yes, I get all those arguments, but these boxes, believe you me, running some of the software that I've got on them, will hold their own against some of the modern VSTs or keyboards. Excuse me. Oh dear. Now, operate as a band in a box, allowing a lightweight, giving home studio rigs where VSTs were loaded, configured and patched. The MUSE was very powerful. They became popular with many well-known artists, but the price point and the advances in standard computer hardware, as I've just said, kind of started to make their perceived benefit less and less over the cost of the units themselves. And also we had issues with some VSTs not being compatible with the platform. And I think that kind of stopped a lot of people from buying these. Now, what have I learned about my purchases of the MUSE Receptor? And many are documented in a series of videos, and if I can remember, I will put those links below. But if you're going to buy a one, ensure you don't buy anything less than a Rev C with OS 1.7, because you're going to have a nightmare trying to upgrade it without MUSE's support. Preferably buy a 2 or greater, as MUSE added support for certain things like SATA support, and utilities allow you to clone the hard drive, which is a really important thing when you get hold of a MUSE Receptor, because it doesn't take a lot to bugger up the operating system if you do something rather silly. Ensure before you buy the unit it boots, because if it doesn't boot, that kind of indicates that the person who had it before you has buggered about with it, and you're going to need, unless you're a Linux guru, you're going to need some help from the MUSE community to try and get your receptor up and running. And believe you me, playing around in Linux, if you don't know what you're doing with Linux, is a pain in the rump. So that's kind of a couple of things. And at the point of writing that response, and actually today I've seen another one on eBay, there's at least 2 MUSE Receptors being sold where they are stating that it doesn't boot. So if you're a Linux aficionado, you know what? Knock yourself out because you're going to have fun with that one. If you're not a Linux aficionado, wide berth. Give them a wide berth. Don't bother.